Welcome to Femme and Furious, a podcast where pop culture meets a feminine framing. I am your host, Julia Rose Portella, and today we're going to a wrestling expo with our dad. But before we dive into today's episode, let me tell you how you can support the podcast. You can subscribe anywhere that you get your podcast. You can go watch full video breakdowns on YouTube, on Substack, on Patreon. You can follow the podcast on social media on the platform of your choosing at Femme and Furious Pod. And you can follow me over on OnlyFans at Hungry Ghosts. I'm just kidding, obviously, about that last bit. We're talking about Margo's Got Money Troubles, episode 4. Let's take a little chic peek. Spoiler warning, we are talking about both the book and the TV show up until this point. The episode title is Buddies. It is written by Eva Anderson. It is directed by Kate Herron. The vibe check for this episode is put your space buns in, which if you're watching, I've got them, and go to a stranger's house. We commit to the bit on this podcast. Feral factor, 8.5 out of 10. Who this episode is for: Zelda stans, wrestling nerds, cosplay cuties, and social media baddies. Hot girl hot take. Stay with me for a minute, okay? This is the biggest diversion that we've gotten from the book. And honestly, I totally get it. If you have Nick Offerman acting as a pro wrestler, you need to use Nick Offerman as a pro wrestler. And you need to do it as much as possible. Like, it's one of the best parts of the show. Here's the thing though, not to be a book purist, but I am really missing how much Jinx's wrestling career and his advice because of wrestling influences Margo's OnlyFans decision. So in the book, it is strictly from advice that Jinx gives to Margo, where he says, like, hey, if a new wrestler is coming into the scene, like, they typically hook up with a more seasoned wrestler. It gets them views, it gets their name out there. In the book, Jinx is the one that says, you have to decide what kind of persona are you going to be. Are you going to be a heel, which is like a villain and people hate you, and that's how you get views and likes and get connected to the audience? Or are you going to be a face, somebody that's more heroic and that the audience loves to root for? And they kind of have this like whole conversation about whether she's a heel or a face and how she's going to hook up with other people from OnlyFans to like figure this out. And that's what leads her to have this original conversation that she has with Wang Mangler, where they do a collaboration. I think Margo pays her like $250 and she gets promoted on her page. And then that sort of escalates once that sort of like crashes and burns. Like, I've gotten all the people that I'm going to get out of that. She decides to go and collaborate with them again and pushes that relationship a little bit further. So I'm kind of missing the fact that like Jinx is a more direct influence to Margo's like OnlyFans journey. Not just the suggestion because of Annabella, but like the way that he translates, at first indirectly, he doesn't know that this is what he's doing, but the way that he translates his wrestling career and his understanding of how to get an audience to consume you as a wrestler to like Margo's OnlyFans marketing journey. I also started to feel a lot of pressure in this episode. On one hand, I feel like we're moving too fast through the story, and on the other hand, I feel like we're not moving fast enough. There's only 8 episodes, so we're halfway through the season at the end of this episode. There's only 4 left, and so much would have to happen in these 4 episodes to get to the end of the book. When I researched and looked at the cast list, I noticed that a specific character in the book is not listed at all as part of the cast. So either they did away with the storyline, which is fine, and we can talk about that if that's what happens, or they're anticipating doing a second season, and maybe this first season isn't going to cover till the end of the book, though a second season hasn't been announced yet. I'm wondering if they're thinking that this will be adapted over 2 to 3 seasons, which I would be thrilled with, by the way, especially since it feels like there's a lot of big beats in the book left to cover. I am really liking the show so far. I think it's a really good adaptation. I think it's going a lot deeper into the relationships between Cheyenne and Jinx, which we don't get maybe enough of in the book, and certainly going much deeper into like Cheyenne as a character. I'm sure part of that is just because, like, hey, you have Michelle Pfeiffer playing this fucking role. Like, again, you need to milk Michelle Pfeiffer for all that she is when you're getting that kind of star power. So I am really liking the show, but the book is very precious to me. It's a 5-star read. I do not give 5 stars out easily, if at all. And so I want the adaptation to truly honor each and every special beat from the book because there's so many and it's so rich in what it's providing as a social commentary about all of the different things that get navigated through this book. So that's our chic peek. Let's have a quickie where we will explore key themes, key moments, and our feminist footnotes. So let's start with key moments. I'm just going to kind of roll from one to the next. We're going to start, though, this part of the story with like Jinx finding out about Hungry Ghost, because I would say that's the first real key moment of this episode. And much like the book, Jinx does not handle this well, this information about Margo doing OnlyFans, despite being quite progressive about other things. He's the one that mentions Annabelle's OnlyFans to begin with. He presumes ahead of this conversation, like he's not thinking she's going to say OnlyFans. He thinks that Margo and Susie are dating. So he's quite progressive in a lot of other ways. And yet Jinx is this sort of stand-in for a moral tolerance and moral authority that the general public has about sex work. He even says this is not something an honorable person does, which of course is intentionally ironic, coming from a heroin addict who later this episode will insist on lying about his drug addiction when he goes to the hospital. Is that something that an honorable person does? The way that Jinx initially responds is the way that people respond out in the world. It's as if their own moral failings are less egregious than a woman who would elect to do OnlyFans. As if OnlyFans is somehow more demoralizing than all the other things that people do in the world. Addiction, gambling, cheating, etc. You pick your poison, right? And by the way, all of those other things, addiction, gambling, cheating, have potential to negatively impact others. Whereas someone who is engaging in sex work is most likely to be the target of a crime instead of the instigator of one. Hell, even accidentally getting someone pregnant, an act that requires 2 people, can still leave the moral and ethical responsibility to the woman. So in the example of Jinx and Cheyenne, Jinx got to walk away from Margo and Cheyenne. Mark got to walk away from Margo and Bodhi. And in both times, these women are participating in jobs that require, as Jinx so elegantly says, using sex and exhibitionism to get what they want. Cheyenne works at Hooters, or did when Margo was growing up, right? Now she works at Bloomingdale's. And Margo is sort of taking the elevated position at OnlyFans. In both cases, these women are using their body and their sex appeal to provide for their children when no father is involved. And not only does Jinx know this conceptually about Cheyenne, but he still seems to pine after her, seems interested in her, seems disappointed that she's getting married, to the point that Margo even brings that up to Cheyenne when they're talking about it at the dress shop. So his logic against Margo doing OnlyFans sort of falls apart at the seam because of the thesis of his relationship with Cheyenne. And it makes it even more deplorable that he uses Mark as this like bargaining chip or this way to guilt trip Margo about it, saying like, well, he may one day want to re-enter, which at this point he has no idea that Mark has given up all of his claims to Bodhi through this NDA. And still, even then, even if Mark wanted to re-enter the picture, the fact that the distaste of OnlyFans centers around how the men in Margo's life, namely him as her father and potentially Mark as the father of Bodhi, feel about her job is this like patriarchal view of what sex work is, that men are the one to put sex work in a position of being demoralizing, even though they are the ones that are engaging with the sex work. I mean, Mark did not find Margo through OnlyFans, but Jinx found Cheyenne by eating at a Hooters, was attracted to a woman that worked at Hooters, which isn't sex work, it's restaurant work, but it's restaurant work, and waitressing that deliberately uses the sexualization and objectification of women as a platform to pull people into the restaurant. No point is Jinx deliberately asking Margo why she's doing this or if she even likes doing this. Like, Margo seems to really be enjoying herself. She's having fun. She thinks her photos are funny. She's doing cosplay. She's building a better relationship with Susie. And on top of it all, she's getting paid and she's able to stay home with her son. She doesn't have to go to work. She doesn't have to find childcare because she's able to just be home and be with him and work on an alternative schedule around Bodhi to support him. So Margo then pointing out that she has a son to provide for, and how dare Jinx judge her is so valid. And on top of it, she seems to be enjoying this. It's better than working at a restaurant, right? And I think her calling him out in this way becomes a very real shifting point in their understanding of each other and their relationship with each other. You can see it in Jinx's face when Margo says this to him. You can see that he realizes that he's made a mistake. In fact, the camera lingers on the shift in his face. It's not just like a quick shot to him. It sits there for a moment as what she says to him, how dare you judge me, lands for him emotionally, and you see his face visibly soften and realize in this moment that he's wrong, essentially. So I'm going to roll this key moment sort of into the next key moment, which is Jinx's accident. And the accident is critical because it forces Jinx to contend with three very key things. Number one is the fact that he was wrong to judge Margo, since, like her, he is using his body and exhibitionism to achieve success in a career of entertainment. Number two, he has to confront the nature of his addiction and the fact that there is stigma around drug addiction, especially when you are going to the doctor, to receive drugs after an accident, and the fact that he doesn't want to be judged or treated unfairly by a doctor directly correlates to his understanding of his overreaction and the way that he stigmatizes Margo being on OnlyFans. And number three, the fact that history repeats itself, and like him, Mark is a married man who paid Margo off to return to his life Bodhi free. Jinx may not have paid off Cheyenne, but he obviously didn't do the quote unquote right or honorable thing by cheating on Sherry and getting Cheyenne pregnant and then not sticking around to help her. Jinx is confronting his own failures again and again throughout this episode. And so even though this is Margo's got money troubles, this episode is really centered on how Jinx has to contend with the type of father and the type of person that he has been in the past. Even to the point where he says, I don't normally go to these wrestling expos because that was for somebody who I was, and I'm not that person anymore. So the fact that he has evolved into this person who does like Tai Chi in his empty ass room in the morning, instead of this very maximalist lifestyle that comes with pro wrestling, he has to confront the person that he was when he was making all of these choices. The fact that he did cheat on Sherry, the fact that he was a drug addict or is a drug addict. You don't just evolve out of that. And the fact that he got somebody pregnant and didn't do, the right thing by her, which Cheyenne calls him out on this episode. She's like, you don't think you could have told me to bend my fucking knees. It is Jinx's own shame about his perceived failure as a father, both past and present, that drives him to Mark's office at the end of this episode where he breaks Mark's fucking hand. I genuinely feel that this confrontation that he has with Mark is like 5% about Margo and Bodhi and 95% spiraling about what Cheyenne said to him, which is that he doesn't know Margo and Margo doesn't have the slightest clue about him, and his guilt over what he did or didn't do for Cheyenne and Margo back when Margo was growing up. He literally says a good handshake is the sign of a good character, which is obviously something that's on his mind this entire episode after he has called Margo dishonorable. Then he continues to say to Mark, "You would be a proponent of good character, wouldn't you, Professor? I mean, if you had a kid, you would want which we know that Mark knows that Bodhi is a boy, but Jinx doesn't just stop at he. He says he or she, and the she here is Margo, right? If you had a kid, you would want he or she to grow up to be a person of good character. Am I right? So the fact that whatever contentment he truly has about Margo doing OnlyFans is almost something that he is taking on as his own parental failure by being a man that was just like Mark, who really wasn't that involved in his child's life. He feels that if he had been there to help Cheyenne or to be present for Margo, that maybe she would be somebody who had a better judgment of character and therefore not in this position at all. Whether that was like doesn't get pregnant by her fucking teacher or like doesn't feel like she needs to do OnlyFans or whatever. But it's not really that he's judging Margo at this point. He's judging himself for being the type of parent that allows their child to get to this position in the first place. Even though we stan Margo and her OnlyFans, we stan Hungry Ghost, and we don't feel that she's doing anything wrong here on this podcast. I love this, and I love the story for a reason, but I just think that this is so fascinating and so interesting. So as far as key themes go, there's one that really stands out to me this episode, and it's this idea of it takes a village. I would say that it's a sense of girlhood, but it goes much deeper than that. The show makes it a point that this journey of motherhood, or even maybe the journey of life, isn't designed to be a solo experience. Margo has experienced such a sense of isolation, something that is so familiar to anyone listening to this podcast, whether you've been a single mother or not. The fact that Mark ghosted her when she said she was going to keep the baby, the fact that Cheyenne shamed her when she told her she was going to keep the baby, the fact that her friend fires her from the restaurant despite the fact that she needs a fucking job, and her best friend, Becca, suggests that she gives Bodhi up to foster care, and then her roommates move out and put her in a more financially precarious position. She's been feeling so alone in this major moment in her life. And while I am not a mother myself, this seems to be something that is consistent for a lot of new mothers, no matter their age, no matter their circumstances. This idea of feeling isolated and alone in it is, I think, just something that comes with the experience of motherhood, or at least from every mother that I know in my life, which is a lot of mothers. But the fact that all of these things happen open her up to this beautiful relationship that is blossoming between her and Jinx. This beautiful relationship that is blossoming between her and Susie. Having Susie as this moral and physical support, not just with Bodhi, but as her photographer for her OnlyFans or for somebody who helps her with her cosplay. Just to see the two of them crammed together in this tiny bed, having like total sleepover vibes, despite them both having their own rooms and their own places to sleep. It is this sense of them fostering this closeness between them, this real sense of sisterhood. Susie, as somebody who is not ashamed at all of Margo, has not shamed her at all, not for getting pregnant, not for having the baby, not for making her life more difficult by being her roommate and bringing a baby home, not for doing OnlyFans. Like at every single stage of this journey, Susie has been open-minded, kind, and compassionate. She's been helpful. She's encouraged her. This idea of it takes a village then extends into her hungry ghost world too. Margo realizes that if she's going to really take her OnlyFans page to the next level and do this professionally and make a living off of this, that she needs to collaborate. And that inspiration leads her to message Wang Mangler. Even though Susie says you can't buy buddies, Margo is speaking the language of somebody who creates on this app. Money speaks on this app. And right before we see her get a message from Wang Mangler, there is this beautiful shot, again, a lingering shot of the bird of paradise flower, which symbolizes joy and a celebration of success. So these girls who Margo is essentially bribing to be in a collaboration with are going to become a part of the village that is ultimately her financial success. We know that this is going to lead to financial success for her because she's now signed her second NDA in this show. They basically say to her when they sit down with her, like, they both have 50,000 fans, right? They're both like, you're going to sign an NDA because your life is going to get better. And if not for the worst, we don't want to be sued. Because they know that by bringing her into this operation that they've got going on, that she's going to gain fans. They're like, you need to start a TikTok, you need to start an Instagram as a hungry ghost persona. You need to also block all of the people in your life that would potentially know you that are going to have something to say. And you need to build this deep well of resistance inside of you because there's going to be men or people on the internet who tell you to take your vagina to a cheese grater. That's the door that you're opening up by working with us. We're going to bring you a lot of money. We're going to bring you a lot of success. We're going to bring you a lot of fans. But with that comes doxing and hate from people on the internet. They're bringing her into their village and she's extending her village out to them. This feels particularly ripe as a theme of the episode, especially because we get to witness the inverse of it. Cheyenne shows up claiming that she has a date with Margo to do wedding prep. Whether or not this is true, we don't really know, but it emphasizes how small Cheyenne's community is. Last week, she mentioned not having anyone else to be her maid of honor. And now, this episode, she's relying on Margo again to be the one that she can come to taste the wedding cakes because she doesn't want to do it. So when Jinx then tries to be a part of Cheyenne's village, she's like, I'll do this thing for you. That's totally fine. And is coaching her on how to be a better grandparent, essentially, to Bodhi. She says to him, I don't suppose you could have shared this with me back then. When you walked out on her, she was a baby, you know? Of all the time she would need to be held, would need to be made to feel safe. And, you know, couldn't bother to say to me, just bend your fucking knees. It emphasizes how alone Cheyenne was in this journey, how clueless she was, how inadequate she felt. When Margo was in this position as a newborn baby and Cheyenne is in this position as a newfound mother. It's so obvious that Margo and Cheyenne both lacked community, but like most children, Margo does just a little bit better than her mom and she actively builds it for herself, even if it's this unconventional community. So instead of suffering in isolation like Cheyenne obviously has, Margo is like, yeah, I'm gonna open my arms to my drug addicted father because he's pretty fucking good with my kid, you know? I'm gonna open my arms to Susie, somebody who felt uncomfortable telling our other roommates that she's a cosplayer because she's pretty fucking good to me and my kid. Like, I'm gonna open my community to Wang Mangler and to Succulent Rose because they're willing to help me, so I'm willing to help them. Like, she is willing to be in these reciprocal relationships with people who are not conventionally the people that you're supposed to quote unquote have relationships with. And yet it works for her because she's not looking to judge people off of these surface characteristics that might get tagged to the people that are around her, and instead truly judges them by their character, which is to say, like, so what, Dad, that you were a drug addict? You're a seemingly good person. You're helping me. You're willing to be here and be around for Bodhi. You're good with Bodhi. He likes being with you. All he does is cry for Mom, but he seems to be fine for you. She's judging the person based off of who they are today and how they show up today, not where they've come from or what they do that is like off kilter. And I think that is actually the biggest testament to Margo and her character, is the fact that she is somebody that's not judgmental, and beyond that, she's resourceful. So she's going to build the community for herself. She's going to take the person in front of her at face value, not at what is stigmatized because of these attachments that they have. And I think that actually shows you what a quality person that Margo actually is. And I love Margo. I think she is one of the most compassionate and open-minded characters that we see in a really long while. And I just appreciate her, and I appreciate what Elle Fanning is bringing to her in this role. As far as feminist footnotes go, Cheyenne says, "Sometimes I think the whole wedding industrial complex is designed to make a woman feel like a failure," which is what I'm going to write the Substack article that supports this episode of the podcast. So if you're new here or you're somewhat new here, every episode of the podcast is posted over on Substack. So you can watch a full video breakdown over there. If you like listening to it, fine. You want it to be an audio podcast. But if you want to watch, you can watch it on Substack. And over there, I will always go deeper into something that we talk about in this episode, in each and every episode. So as far as like the wedding complex, the wedding industry, we are going to be talking over on Substack about how the wedding industry as it is reinforces these patriarchal / capitalistic experiences that women have, from the financial stakes of a wedding to the unpaid labor that women put into a wedding to bridal culture. We're going to be talking about it all over on the Substack. So go on over there. You can go read that article. We'll talk about it a little bit more. And that is the end of our episode. Let us crack open the burn book, where we will look at the superlatives, starting with the Bold and Bothered Award. This award is strictly for the femme and the furious. It is the moment that relays the most feminine rage, and it is Margo saying, "I have a son to provide for. How dare you judge me?" And she says it through gritted teeth. And I love this moment. The Shiro Award. This award goes to the baddie who is the most inspiring, or the moment that is the most empowering. And I think it is Nicole Kidman, sexy as she is, as fucking Lace. She is everything to me. Everything to me. The fact that she went to law school and then opened up this office in Costa Mesa is fucking great. The fact that she's all decked out in her leather outfit. I'm sorry. Leather is dead to us. The fact that she is all decked out in her lace outfit is so wonderful. I just thought this was such a great addition of her as Lace in the show. The Femme Fatale Award, for the most smash the patriarchy moment of the episode. And it goes to Cheyenne. Sometimes I think the whole wedding industrial complex is designed to make a woman feel like a failure. Speak Your Truth trophy. I've got 2 lines that are the best from this episode. One is when Margo says in the beginning of the episode, "Turns out the ones who hate their dicks, they tip the most." I thought that was really funny. And the other is when they're doing this photo shoot, Susie and Margo is talking about Wang Mangler and Succulent Rose, and she's like, "They're afraid they're gonna get stale, and I'm fresh meat, high in omega-3s. And she's posing as she does this. She's doing her thing. She's got her nips out. And Susie is just like, "Ooh, gobble, gobble." I thought that was so funny. I just thought they were hysterical. I love them together. Susie and Margo are so precious to me. I love their relationship so much. And then last but not least, honorary heartthrob, because I'm just a girl, okay? And I want to talk about the most swoon-worthy moments. So If you are chronically online at all, you know that there is a video of Elle Fanning, who plays Margo in the show. She's talking about Jack Black, where she calls him sex on legs. And that's how I feel when Nick Offerman rips his shirt off as Jinx and he's waving it around. He's like riding it. Sex on legs. Sex on motherfucking legs. Nick Offerman is so hot to me. He is so endearing. He's so charismatic. I don't know what it is. Him as Jinx, I'm like sweating watching him. All right. That is our episode for this week. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Femme and Furious, fully loaded bonus episode. If you like this episode, share it out with your friends. Leave a review. Please, please, please leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast. I will be back on Tuesday. We are covering Euphoria Season 3, Episode 3. I will be back next Wednesday with an interview. We've got a lot of content this week. Next Wednesday with an interview with an author. I will be back on Friday doing The Deal, chapters 21 to 30. And then we'll be back next Sunday for Margo's Got Money Troubles, episode 5. So until then, don't break anyone's hands. Bye.